Indigenous rights and food sovereignty are closely interconnected topics that have been gaining increased attention in recent years. Indigenous communities around the world are reclaiming their right to self-determination and autonomy in the face of ongoing colonization. As part of this process, many indigenous communities are focusing on the protection and promotion of their traditional food systems, which are seen as an essential part of their culture and identity. The concept of food sovereignty was first coined in 1996 by the international peasant movement La Via Campesina. It is defined as the right of peoples to define their own food and agriculture systems, and to determine the policies that govern them. This includes the right to choose the types of food that are produced and consumed, the right to access and manage land and other natural resources, and the right to determine how these resources are managed. Food sovereignty is seen as a way to protect indigenous cultures, promote food security, and ensure that the environment is protected. Indigenous people have a long history of cultural and spiritual connections to food systems. For many indigenous communities, the ability to access and utilize traditional foods is essential to their well-being and identity. Unfortunately, indigenous communities face a number of obstacles when it comes to protecting their food sovereignty. These obstacles include land dispossession, government policies that prioritize the interests of large-scale agribusiness, and climate change, which has adversely impacted traditional agricultural practices. In recent years, indigenous communities have been fighting back against these obstacles. In Canada, for example, the Indigenous food sovereignty movement has been working to raise awareness about the importance of Indigenous food sovereignty and to advocate for policies that will protect and promote Indigenous food systems. The movement is also working to increase access to traditional foods, such as through community gardens and farmers markets. In addition to advocating for policy change, Indigenous communities are also working to reclaim their right to self-determination and autonomy. This includes the right to determine their own food systems, which is seen as an essential part of their cultural identity. This is being done through the development of indigenous food systems, such as traditional fishing and hunting practices, and through the protection of traditional knowledge and practices. Indigenous rights and food sovereignty are interconnected topics that are essential to the survival and protection of indigenous cultures and identities. In order for indigenous communities to protect and promote their food systems, it is important that they are able to reclaim and exercise their right to self-determination and autonomy. This includes the right to access and manage land and other natural resources, the right to choose the types of food that are produced and consumed, and the right to determine how these resources are managed. In addition, it is important that governments and other stakeholders develop policies that prioritize the interests of indigenous communities and promote the protection and promotion of traditional food systems.